Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators are once again on the move here in Chicago. This is a continuation of the big rally and march that we saw on Monday. Once one person gets through and puts down their stuff, the others quickly follow. Maria, just in the last few minutes, police here in Ottawa have been handing out these flyers to the demonstrators that basically says, well, you got to leave now or you might be arrested. And the police have also expanded what they call the no-go zone. What's the feeling like today?
They are excited.
All right, thank you so much. Sir Richard Branson, nice to meet you. Well, there you go, from the man himself. The crew is always talking to the villagers to find out what their biggest needs are, because sometimes those needs change day to day. It's the last trek of a journey that for some took weeks and almost 5,000 kilometers, crossing the Rio Grande River from Mexico into the U.S. At times, we hear kids screaming as they're hoisted onto whoever has the strongest and highest shoulders. They link arms for good reason. A 3-year-old child was swept away here last week by the current. Eventually, after reaching the American side, a young man finds a bit of an opening in the barbed wire. He lays down his backpack as a pathway. And once one person gets through and puts down their stuff, the others quickly follow. For some, the very last step is the hardest. And now they smile and cry. It wasn't easy, this mother tearfully tells us. The Border Patrol is hands off. Once they made it across, these people were asking us where they could officially turn themselves in to apply for asylum and just get some water. It's here, a few steps away, under a bridge. On Tuesday, the Border Patrol cut through parts of the barbed wire to allow migrants in.
The border actually starts in the middle of the river, so by the time the migrants encounter our agents, they are already in the U.S. They can't climb up the riverbank, which is fine until they start getting themselves into trouble. If they start getting swept away by the currents, if they start succumbing to the environment, the extreme temperatures and the humidity that you all feel right now, and my men and women see that, they are not going to let somebody die.
A former Border Patrol agent tells us the U.S. is not doing enough to keep migrants out.
They know this is the land of freebies.
What would you say to these people who are crossing right now in front of us?
Look, one thing is, why don't you stay home and fix your country? They'll give you economic reasons, corruption, socialism, dictatorships. I get that, but at some point or another, and I use America as a model, we pushed back and fought against everything that they're fleeing.
But they all felt the fear in their home countries was greater than the fear of making this trip. And once they do get over, exhausted, some praying to whoever might be listening, they rejoice in at least the possibility of a fresh start. Are you happy?
Happy.
Andy Rosejan, Eagle Pass, Texas. History will remember him as Tuva number 2. But today, he is the top Turk in space. Tuva Atasever was speechless as he took the stage after his flight aboard the Virgin Galactic Unity spacecraft in New Mexico. The 90-minute flight sent Tuva and 3 paying customers blasting into the lower reaches of space and reveling in their brief weightlessness.
It's super fun and it's so comforting as well. There's something to it which brings about an immense serenity. There's a innate peacefulness to it.
On the other hand, Tuva said the blast that propelled them into space was anything but peaceful.
Boy, that power that we were riding on that ship was probably the most impressive aspect of the flight.
Tuva headed into the flight with a half a dozen science experiments attached to his body. That orange headgear measured how lower bodily fluids tend to collect in the skull during space flights and cause health problems. And he got a pre-flight hug from Virgin co-founder Richard Branson. It was Branson's very first space flight in 2021 that kicked off the 7 crewed missions since.
It's a beautiful day, and looking forward. I think it's your second Turkish astronaut.
Yes. Tuva's family was thrilled too.
It was great. It was wonderful. Well, at first we were all, of course, kind of concerned because it also has risks, But right now we're so happy.
For Tuva, he will now follow in the footsteps of the first Turk in space, Alper Gezerafca, by talking to kids in Turkey and inspiring them to look toward space. This was the last space flight for Unity. Virgin says they may repurpose it somehow, or maybe even put it in a museum. And Turkey continues to look skyward too. Next month, the first Turkish communication satellite will launch from Florida. And Turkey is chasing after a permanent base on the moon by 2026, just as much as the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans. And Tuva has just taken Turkey one step closer to those sky-high dreams. Andy Roesgen, TRT World, New Mexico. It's noisy and gusty and dusty. It feels rushed and chaotic, but it's maybe the most beautiful sight in the world.
Thank you. God bless you. Welcome.
For villagers in remote areas, there's a non-stop need for food and shelter.
Our biggest need is a place to sleep. As you can see, we are outside in the cold.
Thousands of tons of donated goods are pouring in from around the world, from tents and baby diapers to a single small box of donated beanie hats from America to the arrival on Tuesday of Japan's first government shipment, 18 tons of donated goods, including a portable field hospital.
Not only personally, but all over the country, everybody who saw those scenes on the TV got their hearts broken, and they all wanted to help.
After a couple of chaotic days in the beginning, Incirlik Air Base has streamlined the collection and distribution process. Every time a helicopter arrives, airmen race to line up and load up the goods. About 200 flights are going out each day, and we're on this one, carrying about 2 tons of goods, headed to 3 remote villages that are tough to reach by car. No seats or seat belts on these packed flights, barely enough room for people and boxes. From the air, we get a view of the earthquake scars in the ground. The fault lines run so close to these villages. As the helicopter descends, the villagers rush out. We talked with one man who actually chose to live here with relatives because his apartment in the city was damaged.
10 minutes before the helicopter arrived, I was praying, and another small quake hit. I immediately went outside. Aftershocks are continuing. We got used to it, but the children are scared.
The crew is always talking to the villagers to find out what their biggest needs are, because sometimes those needs change day to day. Within a few minutes, the villagers have a new lease on life. They wish the crew well and wait for their return. Andy Roesgen, TRT World, Adana. Another loud and boisterous rally here, a few blocks outside of the Democratic National Convention. This is a continuation of the big march and rally that we saw on Monday, with thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators showing up. Now, they are not close enough to the arena to be heard inside at the Democratic National Convention. That's certainly a bone of contention between these protesters and the city of Chicago. But I talked to the organizer here who says that he thinks that inside that arena, they are getting the message. The organizer also tells me he is thrilled with the turnout of these rallies. Groups as different as labor rights groups and black groups and Hispanic groups all coming together for the Palestinian cause. Now, the next big march and rally happens on Thursday, just as Kamala Harris will accept her nomination at the Democratic National Convention.